Hello everybody, welcome to TCOM 101, Dr. Mike here. In this video, I want to talk about some of the unintended consequences of all of those TCOM technology megatrends that we talked about in the previous videos. Okay? This is about thinking critically about TCOM technology megatrends. Now, we can sit and have a discussion about all the positive impact of these trends, but I think it's also important to look at the dark side. Everything is complex and contradictory in life. All right, and we have constant battles with technology. It can be our friend, but it can also be our enemy. So we have to have a critical mindset. All right, and understand when I'm talking about some of the negative aspects of the trends, you can look at these as problems that are in need of solutions. Okay, all problems require solutions. So there are opportunities here to make a difference and even to make money by coming up with the proper solutions. So what are some of the unintended consequences of these TCOM technology megatrends that I've been talking about? Well, first, let's talk about unintended consequences. These are also called unanticipated consequences or unforeseen consequences. These are outcomes that are not foreseen and intended when the technology or the trend is created. All right, for example, when we invented automobiles, we had no idea about the unintended consequences of accidents, drunk driving, air pollution, traffic congestion. Those are the negative unintended consequences that we must consider. All right, now a tip: be on the lookout for topics for your upcoming classroom presentations or the virtual presentations that we'll probably be doing. But be on the lookout because I'm going to share a lot of great topics for you to elaborate on. All right, what about this underlying trend, of one that's affecting everything else, and that's the shift to digital technology, the rise of computers. Of course, this started in the tail end of the 20th century, the 1980s and the 1990s. We saw the explosive growth of computer technology, and it's changed the world in many, many positive ways. But one negative consequence of the great digital shift was the rise of millions and millions of tons of toxic e-waste. And this isn't just regular garbage. This is garbage that contains a lot of toxic chemicals that poses a real threat to the environment and to human health. Okay? In fact, e-waste is the fastest growing part of the solid waste stream. And some of the chemicals and materials in cast-off electronics can pose a serious health problem. These things are full of lead. Those old analog TV tubes might have 4 or 5 pounds of lead in each one. They often contain mercury, cadmium, and other hazardous cancer-causing materials. These are commonplace ingredients in e-waste. Now, a lot of our e-waste is exported to China and other countries. Okay, and the poor people sit in this toxic mess trying to extract little fragments of precious metals and other things. And it's just a horrible, disgraceful situation. If you study e-waste, or maybe think about a presentation on it, tell us about the e-waste laws. Did you know Indiana has e-waste laws? It's really illegal to throw out electronics in the regular trash stream. That's against the law here in Indiana. So e-waste is a very important problem for us to address. All right. The next trend we talked about was the rise of information technology. Remember, there's a lot of unanticipated consequences and negative outcomes. I'm only giving you a little sample of some of them. Okay, so we've seen the rise of network computers, information technology, and the internet. That's great, but it's also left something called the digital divide. This is a great inequity in our society and around the world. It's the information rich versus the information poor. What's the digital divide? That's the gap or the divide between people who have access to high tech and information technology and those who don't have as much access. Well, who's at an advantage? Of course, it's people with effective access to information technology. It's very hard to function in this world today, even to apply for a job, unless you have access to information technology. But not everybody has access. Right now, during the COVID crisis that's forced all this online learning in America, we've seen that there are a lot of children who are not equipped with good Wi-Fi connectivity and laptop computers. And there is a horrible digital divide, not only in this country, but around the world. Consider the global internet penetration rate. Penetration is the percentage of people in a population that has access to a technology, okay? The global internet penetration rate is about 54%. About half the world is online, okay? But that means half the world is not. So there's a huge digital divide across the planet. So we've seen the rise of the information poor, a new kind of poverty, people who are cut out of the high tech and the information world. Now, this is really important because it leads to a gap not only in technology, but ultimately in knowledge. Okay, the knowledge gap hypothesis predicts that people who have a lot of high tech and information technology acquire new information and knowledge much faster than people who don't have access to high tech and information technology. So the gap in knowledge between these two groups tends to increase. What can be done about this? Should the government play a role? Well, it's hard to ask the government to subsidize this when we're, over $20 trillion in debt. It's hard to find the political will to make sure everybody is connected and has good information technology. Maybe we should rely on the private sector, the great philanthropists, the rich people, okay? Back in the early part of the 20th century, okay, a famous robber baron named Andrew Carnegie, he made his fortune in the steel industry, and he gave a lot of it back at the end of his life. He set up thousands of free public libraries in cities, especially small rural cities around the country. He was trying to narrow the knowledge gap back in the late 19th and early 20th century. Many cities here in Indiana have these Carnegie Public Libraries, and many of them have this inscription, "Let there be light, let the people be enlightened and gain knowledge." In his case, through books and printed materials. Okay, but maybe a modern day Carnegie could emerge, like a Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, who might be willing to give back part of their vast fortunes in order to narrow the digital divide. Remember, I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of any of these issues. They all need to be elaborated in the classroom presentation. All right, what about this megatrend? Digital convergence, things coming together, companies and technologies converging, a powerful trend. But it also results in a lot of concentration of ownership. I mean, the tech and the media worlds are highly concentrated. That means there's just a handful of giant corporations that control most of the technology and the media in this country. Okay? So, a couple of recent examples: the merger, the convergence of Comcast, the cable giant, and NBC Universal, the content creator, or the recent merger of AT&T, the phone company, with Warner Media, another creator of content, linking up with a distribution company. These are both examples of what are called vertical integration. Anyway, concentration of ownership. So the unintended consequence of convergence might be this concentration of ownership, the fact that a lot of the media and tech companies are held by just a few hands. A small number of companies dominate. All right? So you get the idea, monopoly. Now, I will make a prediction here that very soon, in the next few years, the government will make serious attempts to break up Google, to break up Facebook, to break up Amazon, and the other tech giants that have formed powerful, almost monopolies. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but almost all the major media in this country, TV, news, sports, film, it's controlled by just a handful of companies. 6 companies control almost everything we see, hear, and read in the kind of the mainstream media. These companies are Viacom, CBS, Fox, Walt Disney, AT&T, Time Warner, Comcast, NBC Universal, and Sony. And later in the semester, we'll talk about these companies. You'll gain a good understanding of these companies and their portfolios and their major assets. All right, what about the rise of connectivity? The fact that we're connected now to the internet and other information systems and connected all the time. Well, that is a wonderful trait. It gives us such power to connect with each other and information, but it's got a dark side as well, okay? One of the darkest sides of internet connectivity is this huge issue of internet privacy, which might really be an oxymoron by now. The notion of internet privacy, because the government and big companies are gathering lots of more information than ever before about each and every one of us. All right? So there's a lot of threats to our privacy. Internet privacy is just the right of personal privacy concerning how the information is gathered and stored and used and shared and displayed. Okay, information about us that gets released, typically on the internet. Now, the government of our country has engaged in mass surveillance, has done massive surveillance sweeps of our internet information, okay? And in fact, the government has a giant spy center set up in Utah. Okay? That's kind of the cloud, the server where they do all of this mass surveillance. This was always done. It started after 9/11, and it's done in the name of safety, to catch the bad people and to keep us safe. All right, but there's critical questions about whether or not mass surveillance actually does work to catch the bad people. We know it's a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights, the rights that protect us against unreasonable searches and seizures. Mass surveillance is the intricate surveillance of an entire population in order to monitor the citizens. Now, it happens a lot in China, okay? Probably more than any other country. Mass surveillance takes place, but it's a serious issue right here in our country. And not only is the government doing mass surveillance, of course, the private companies are as well. How do we know about this mass surveillance? Because of the whistleblower, Edward Snowden. Another great topic for a classroom presentation might be this issue of mass surveillance and how we found out about it. Okay, this is back in 2013, and Snowden blew the whistle. And he called into question the government doing this, and he's facing serious consequences because he revealed these top-level government secrets. Now, connectivity brings all kinds of negative, unintended consequences. All of these are great topics for classroom presentations. How about the topic of cyberbullying? Okay, this is a huge problem. And it not only happens to children, but adults as well. I think the whole cancel culture many times and the shaming culture is a form of cyberbullying. But it's a significant topic that one of the student groups should talk about, the problems and the solutions. Cybercrime, things like identity theft and hacking, these have become huge problems in the 21st century because of the internet and the connectivity. One kind of real popular Cybercrime that's happening right now, affecting a lot of people, is called ransomware. And the victims of this are cities and schools and local governments. And what will happen is somebody will send out this malware that locks up the system at a hospital or at in the city government. And they shake them down to pay a ransom in Bitcoin in order to regain access to the computer resources. Huge problem in society and a major nuisance. In fact, you can buy insurance at this point to protect you from ransomware attacks. Well, connectivity brings us a lot of interesting and controversial forms of content. It's okay if somebody does a presentation on this topic, erotica and porn on the internet. Some of us perceive it as a major problem or potential problem, just like internet gambling gives the gamblers all kinds of new opportunities to, in many cases, become addicted. So connectivity does have a dark side. One of the darkest sides is the threat of cyber warfare. This is what keeps some of our generals up at night, not worrying about a traditional military attack with missiles and airplanes and bombs, but worried about a new form of warfare, cyber warfare, when the enemy attacks us using the internet. Now, what is cyber warfare? That's politically motivated hacking that's done to either sabotage or do espionage. So it's lying and spying or trying to do harm to another country. Imagine if the enemy shut down Wall Street or our transportation system or our major hospitals or the electric grid or the dams in our country. This could cause, or interfere with our election. This could cause some serious problems in our country. It's a huge concern, and the cyber war is not something about the future. It's already underway. We are already at war with China, with Russia, with Iran, and with a few other countries. Okay? Most of this is going on behind the scenes. Occasionally we learn about, get a little glimpse about it, but it's definitely happening right now. And the new warriors of the 21st century are cyber warriors. All right, here, I'm going to wrap this up with one more critical issue related to connectivity, and that's fears about an upcoming spectrum crunch. Spectrum is that electromagnetic energy out there that we use. We've learned how to exploit it to engage in all this communication. We need the airwaves or the spectrum, the electromagnetic energy, in order to connect these wireless devices. It's a finite commodity or resource, this spectrum or the electromagnetic energy. There's only a limited amount that we know how to use. And the federal government's worried about this. The Federal Communication Commission says the growing demand for mobile broadband and 5G service, it might outstrip our spectrum capacity. So we got to address this problem, find ways to use compression and make different uses of the various parts of the electromagnetic spectrum in ways that are much more efficient. Because if we don't, there will be a spectrum crunch, and then service quality will suffer and prices are likely to rise. So look, what I've done in this lecture is tried to identify just a handful of the unintended consequences of some of these technology megatrends. I hope you got some ideas for possible classroom presentations. In the next video, we'll continue to talk about these unintended consequences. But for now, take care of yourself and each other and all of the people in our community as we battle the pandemic. And I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.